Assalamu alaikum and hello, my name is Hashima. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be going over the steps that I use to create my vision boards. So I'll be creating a vision board for 2026, and I created physical vision boards for 2025 and 2024. In 2023, I did a digital board, but I prefer the physical ones way more than the digital ones. So that's what I'll be doing in this video. If that's something you're interested in, keep watching. So I start my vision board creation process by brainstorming and writing down all of the things that I want to do for the coming year, the areas I want to focus on, and I try to keep them in categories like wardrobe, education, travel, business. I don't get too specific. My board is an illustration board. I prefer the professional stock boards. I get big ones and then I cut them down to the size that I want. I've made smaller ones. This one is kind of on the large size. Of course, you can get whatever size that you want. You can get a big one and cut it down. I do suggest that you do not use construction paper like the boards that kids use for their school projects. Presentation board weight, I wouldn't suggest that. You want to get a sturdy one so that it can last throughout the year. I move mine around, so I'm always touching my board so, it doesn't fray or anything. Next, you want to get a glue stick that's kind of on the drier side, just so that it's not messy when you're gluing it down. Some of them can be quite messy. And then I have my paper scissors and I have my magazines. Now, I stick with cooking, lifestyle, and fashion magazines because they usually provide all of the clippings that I need for my vision board. The next step is going in and just finding the pages that have the things on it that you want, that are within the goals that you have. Now, the first step, I rip out chunks of pages. I either rip out the whole page or I rip out a huge section because I don't know what shape I'm going to be cutting out the pieces. So I do that. I save that step for last. But if I know that I'm not going to use another part of the page, then I will cut out just a specific area that I'm looking for. Also, another thing is be careful when you are cutting or pulling out your pages to make sure that nothing is on the back side of the page. So you want to look at both sides of the page. That may seem like a duh, but it's something that back in the day when I first started doing vision boards, I made this mistake often where I would rip out or cut out something on the front page, but then I wouldn't realize that something better was on the back page, or something was in an area on the back page that I was unnecessarily cutting out when I was cutting out the thing on the front page. I hope you know what I mean. But yeah, basically just check both sides of the page just to see if there's something juicy on the other side. And so yeah, I just go ahead and I'm just cutting out. I sometimes start cutting with a particular shape in mind based on whatever aesthetic I want to go for. I've noticed that as I was cutting these pieces, there are straight lines, a bunch of straight lines, rectangle squares. But sometimes my boards have rounded edges. So yeah, it really depends on what you're going for, what visual you want. You can do mixed edges like rounded and rectangle. I'm very much into collage art. So if you're not, that's probably what you might be thinking. What is she talking about? Squares and rounded edges? But I like everything to be aesthetically pleasing and just kind of flow, be visually stimulating. So that's why I'm talking about the shapes. So the next step after you roughly pull out the pages and do the rough clippings, then you want to go back in and refine the edges. You want to cut out all the white space or the stuff around what you're focusing on for your clippings. You want to refine it and just kind of cut away all of the stuff that you're not going to be putting on your board, that you don't want to put on your board. You don't want it to look messy or distracting or anything like that. The next part is laying down the things on the board, and I start with a center focal point. Like I just put something in the center that I feel like is a good focal point for the board, and then I start laying things around the sides, and I move things around based on if I'm like, no, I don't like the way that looks right there, no, I'd rather this be over here. And I just do this for however long it takes until I'm satisfied. I'm like, ooh, that's it. One thing I do want to say is after I lay it down, I take a picture of it all laid out in the way that I want. And then I start gluing. And that's just so that I have a reference point in case I forget where pieces are, or in case I glue a piece and I have to move it over or something like that. But that's another reason why you don't want a glue stick that is too wet, because it gets very messy if you have to peel pieces off the board to reset them. So that's why I use a more dry glue stick. But yeah, so I just go ahead and do all the laying out, and then I take a picture and go back in and glue everything down. If you intend to make a vision board for 2026, leave a comment below and let me know. I'm going to be posting a picture of my glued down board, how it turned out, on the community tab, because I didn't do it for this video. I wanted to get the video out before the beginning of the year. And the glue process is one that's tedious, and I just prefer to do it off camera. But yeah, this is the board, a rough kind of look of the board and what it's probably going to look like. So yeah, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment below.